The snowflake that landed on Rebecca Kinsley's cheek felt like a tiny knife, and she knew with horrible certainty that she and her baby were going to die out here on the frozen Montana prairie if someone didn't find them soon. Her daughter Emma, barely 6 months old, had stopped crying an hour ago, and that terrified Rebecca more than anything else in her 22 years of life. She pressed the infant closer to her chest, trying to share what little warmth remained in her own body. But she could feel the cold seeping through every layer of fabric, through skin and muscle, down to the very marrow of her bones. The wind howled across the empty landscape like a living thing, hungry and cruel. Rebecca stumbled forward through snow that now reached past her knees, each step an agony of effort. Her husband Thomas had left their small homestead 3 days ago to buy supplies in Miles City, promising to return before nightfall. When the blizzard had started that first evening, Rebecca had waited by the window, watching the snow pile higher and higher against the door. By the second day, she had known something was terribly wrong. By the third morning, when Emma had developed a fever and begun coughing with a sound like tearing paper, Rebecca had made the desperate decision to try to reach town herself. Now she realized what a fatal mistake that had been. The storm had disoriented her completely. She had no idea which direction she was walking anymore, no idea if she was moving toward help or away from it. All she could see was white in every direction, and all she could feel was the bitter cold stealing the life from her baby with every passing minute. "Please," Rebecca whispered to no one, to God, to the merciless sky. "Please, someone help us." Emma stirred weakly against her chest, and Rebecca felt a surge of desperate hope. At least her daughter was still alive. At least there was still a chance. She forced her legs to keep moving, though they felt like lead weights attached to her hips. The wind pushed against her like a wall, trying to shove her backward, but she leaned into it and kept going. One step. Another step. One more. Then her foot caught on something hidden beneath the snow, a rock or a fallen branch, and she went down hard. Rebecca twisted her body at the last second to protect Emma, taking the full impact on her shoulder and hip. Pain exploded through her, but worse was the realization that she didn't have the strength to stand up again. She tried once, twice, her legs shaking with the effort, but they simply wouldn't support her weight anymore. "No," she gasped, tears freezing on her cheeks. "No, please, no." She managed to pull herself into a sitting position, hunched over Emma to shield her from the wind. The baby's face was pale, her lips tinged with blue. Rebecca's heart clenched with terror. She opened her coat and pulled Emma inside against her skin, buttoning the fabric around them both. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough, but it was all she had left to give. "Stay with me, sweet girl," Rebecca murmured, rocking slightly. "Stay with me. Your papa will find us. He'll come home and find us gone, and he'll come looking. He will. I know he will." But even as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. What if Thomas had been caught in the storm too? What if he was lying frozen somewhere between Miles City and their homestead? What if no one ever found them, and they simply became 2 more casualties of the brutal Montana winter? Rebecca's eyes grew heavy. The cold had progressed past pain into a strange, numb exhaustion. She knew this was dangerous, knew that falling asleep now meant never waking up, but it was so hard to keep her eyes open, so hard to keep fighting. Maybe just for a moment, maybe she could rest for just a moment. The sound of hoofbeats broke through her fading consciousness like a gunshot. Rebecca's eyes flew open. She tried to call out, but her voice emerged as barely more than a croak. The sound was getting closer, though. Someone was definitely approaching. She forced one arm free from her coat and waved it weakly, praying whoever it was would see her dark form against the white snow. "Help," she managed, louder this time. Please help us." The shape of a horse and rider materialized through the swirling snow like a ghost. Rebecca felt a sob of relief catch in her throat. The rider pulled his horse to a stop and swung down from the saddle in one smooth motion. He was tall, she could see that much, dressed in heavy winter gear with a thick wool coat and a hat pulled low over his face. "Madam." His voice was deep, rough with concern. "Madam, what in God's name are you doing out here, my baby?" Rebecca said, her words slurring together. "She's cold. Please, she's so cold." The man dropped to his knees beside her, and Rebecca got her first clear look at his face. He was young, maybe 26 or 27, with dark hair plastered to his forehead by the snow and eyes that were the color of storm clouds. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous look, but his expression was pure alarm as he took in their condition. "Let me see her," he said, and without waiting for permission, he gently opened Rebecca's coat. His face went pale when he saw Emma's blue-tinged skin. "Jesus, how long have you been out here?" "I don't know," Rebecca admitted. "Hours. I was trying to get to town. My husband, he didn't come home and the baby was sick. And I thought I could make it, but I got lost in the storm and I fell and I couldn't get up again. And she's so cold. Please, you have to help her, please." Hey, it's all right," the man said, his voice gentling even as he moved with swift efficiency. "I've got you now, both of you. My name is Travis Henderson. I've got a cabin about half a mile from here. Can you stand if I help you?" "I don't think so," Rebecca said, hating how weak she sounded. "I tried. I can't feel my legs anymore." Travis didn't hesitate. He shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around Rebecca and Emma both, then scooped them up in his arms as though they weighed nothing at all. Rebecca wanted to protest that she was too heavy, that he should just take Emma and come back for her, but the words wouldn't come. She sagged against his chest, feeling the solid strength of him, the warmth that still clung to his clothes despite the storm. He carried her to his horse, a big bay gelding that stood rock-steady despite the wind. Getting them all mounted was an awkward affair, but Travis managed it, settling Rebecca in front of him on the saddle with Emma still pressed between them. He wrapped one arm securely around them both and took up the reins with his other hand. "Hold on," he said, and urged the horse forward. The ride that followed passed in a blur for Rebecca. She was dimly aware of Travis's body sheltering her from the worst of the wind, of his voice murmuring reassurances that she couldn't quite make out over the howl of the storm. Time seemed to stretch and compress strangely. It felt like both an eternity and only moments before Travis was dismounting and carrying her through a doorway into blessed, wonderful warmth. The cabin was small but well built, with a stone fireplace where a fire still burned low. Travis kicked the door shut behind them and carried Rebecca straight to the fireplace, setting her down gently on a thick rug. He immediately began working to remove her wet outer clothes, his hands quick and impersonal. "I need to get you both out of these wet things," he said. "We have to warm you up slowly or it could stop your hearts. Do you understand?" Rebecca nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure she did understand. Everything felt distant and hazy. Emma. She needed to focus on Emma. She looked down at her daughter, who lay terrifyingly still against her chest. "The baby," she whispered. "Please." Travis gently lifted Emma from Rebecca's arms. The baby looked impossibly tiny in his large, calloused hands. He carried her closer to the fire and began carefully removing her wet clothes, his jaw tight with concentration. Rebecca watched through eyes that kept trying to close, fighting to stay conscious. She needed to know Emma was all right. She needed to know. "She's breathing," Travis said, as if reading Rebecca's mind. "Her breathing is shallow but steady. That's good. That means we have a chance." He grabbed blankets from a trunk near the wall and wrapped Emma in them, then held her close to his chest, rubbing her back gently to stimulate circulation. Rebecca felt tears sliding down her face. A stranger was saving her baby's life while she lay here useless and weak. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet," Travis said, but his voice was kind. "We're not out of danger. I need to warm you up too, but I can't do that while holding her. Can you hold her against you? Skin to skin is the best way to share warmth." Rebecca nodded and held out her arms. Travis brought Emma to her, and Rebecca tucked her daughter inside her dress against her bare skin, wrapping her arms around the tiny body. Emma was so cold, like holding ice, but Rebecca could feel the faint flutter of her heartbeat. Still alive, still fighting. Travis went to work building up the fire, adding logs until the flames roared hot and bright. Then he brought more blankets and wrapped them around Rebecca and Emma, cocooning them in layers of wool. He heated water over the fire and made tea, strong and bitter but hot, and held the cup to Rebecca's lips until she had drunk it all. "What's your name?" he asked as he worked, his voice calm and steady, probably trying to keep her conscious and alert. "Rebecca Kinsley," she said. "The baby is Emma. We have a homestead about 8 miles west of Miles City. My husband went to town for supplies 3 days ago and he didn't come back. Emma got sick, and I thought I could make it to the doctor, but I got lost in the storm." Travis was quiet for a moment, and something in his expression made Rebecca's heart sink. "Mrs. Kinsley," he said carefully, "I came from Miles City myself today. There was talk in town about a man who'd been found frozen to death on the road yesterday morning. They said his horse must have spooked in the storm and thrown him. I didn't catch the name, but they said he had supplies from the general store. The words seemed to come from very far away. Rebecca heard them, understood them on some level, but her mind refused to accept their meaning. Thomas. Her Thomas, who had courted her back in Illinois and convinced her to come west with dreams of building a life together. Thomas, who had kissed her goodbye 3 mornings ago and promised to bring back peppermint candy for her and fabric for a new dress. "No," she said, her voice small and broken. "No, that can't be right. He's coming home. He's going to find us." Travis's eyes were full of sorrow. "Madam, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The grief tried to crash over her like a wave, but Rebecca pushed it back. She couldn't fall apart now. She couldn't. Emma needed her. Her daughter needed her to be strong, to survive this night, to keep breathing and keep fighting. The grief could wait. It would have to wait. "Is my baby going to live?" she asked instead, looking down at Emma's pale face. "I don't know," Travis said honestly. "But we're going to do everything we can. You both need food and warmth and rest. We'll get through this night, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings." He went to the stove and began preparing something, moving around the small cabin with the ease of long practice. Rebecca watched him through the fog of her exhaustion, this stranger who had appeared out of the storm like an answer to her desperate prayer. He was handsome in a rough-hewn way. She noticed distantly, all sharp angles and hard muscle, a man built for the harsh demands of frontier life. But it was the gentleness in his hands as he prepared food, the careful way he moved around her and Emma that caught her attention. He brought her soup, rich and hot, and helped her eat it one-handed while she held Emma with the other arm. The food helped, sending warmth spreading through her body. She could feel her fingers and toes again, though they burned and tingled painfully as the circulation returned. "You need to rest," Travis said when she had finished eating. "You can have the bed. I'll keep the fire going through the night and watch over Emma." "No," Rebecca said immediately. "I can't let you do that. This is your home. I won't take your bed." "Madam," Travis said, and there was steel beneath the courtesy. "You've been through hell today. You're a widow with a sick baby and you're in my home. You'll take the bed and that's the end of it." Rebecca wanted to argue further, but she simply didn't have the strength. She let Travis help her to the bed, a simple rope frame affair with a corn husk mattress, but it felt like the finest hotel bed in San Francisco. He arranged blankets around her and Emma, making sure they were warm but not overheated. "Call out if you need anything," he said. "Anything at all. I'll be right here." Rebecca nodded, already drifting. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Travis settling into a chair by the fire, his profile strong and watchful in the firelight, a guardian against the storm that still raged outside. She woke several times during the night, surfacing from nightmares about cold and snow and Thomas's frozen body lying somewhere on the prairie. Each time, she found Travis still awake, still keeping watch. Once she woke to find him holding Emma, rocking her gently and singing something low and soft that Rebecca couldn't quite make out. The sight made her throat tight with emotion, but she was too exhausted to examine why. She simply closed her eyes and let sleep take her again. Morning came slowly, the storm light turning the windows from black to gray. Rebecca woke properly to find Travis crouched beside the bed, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Rebecca took inventory of her body. Everything hurt, a deep, bone-level ache, but she was warm and the fog had lifted from her mind. She looked down at Emma, who lay sleeping peacefully against her chest, and felt her heart nearly stop. "She has color," Rebecca breathed. "Oh God, she has color again." It was true. Emma's face was no longer blue-tinged and waxy, but a healthy pink. Her breathing was deeper, more regular. As Rebecca watched, the baby's eyes fluttered open, and she made a small, querulous sound that was the most beautiful thing Rebecca had ever heard. "She made it through the night," Travis said, and the relief in his voice was genuine. "You both did. The worst is over now." Rebecca burst into tears. She couldn't help it. All the terror and grief and exhaustion of the past days came flooding out in great, heaving sobs. Emma started crying too, startled by her mother's distress, and that just made Rebecca cry harder. She was alive. Her baby was alive. They had survived. Travis didn't try to hush her or tell her everything was fine. He simply sat on the edge of the bed and let her cry, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder in silent support. When the storm of emotion finally passed, he handed her a handkerchief and waited while she wiped her face and composed herself. "I need to feed her," Rebecca said, her voice hoarse. "She hasn't eaten since yesterday morning." Travis immediately stood and turned his back, giving her privacy. Rebecca arranged her dress to nurse Emma and felt another wave of relief when the baby latched on strongly and began to eat. Everything was going to be all right. They were going to survive this. "Mr. Henderson," she said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you. You saved our lives." "Travis," he said, still facing away, "just Travis, and you don't need to thank me. I did what anyone would do." "Not anyone," Rebecca said. "Plenty of people would have ridden right past us in that storm if they even saw us at all. You stopped. You helped. You sat up all night making sure we were all right. That's not something to dismiss." Travis was quiet for a moment. "I couldn't just leave you there," he said finally. "Couldn't live with myself if I had." When Emma had finished eating and been changed, Travis made breakfast for them all. Simple fare, bacon and beans and coffee, but Rebecca ate as though it was a feast. She was ravenous, her body demanding fuel to recover from yesterday's ordeal. The storm had blown itself out during the night, and pale winter sunlight now streamed through the windows. Travis went outside to tend to his horse and check the conditions, returning with the news that the snow had drifted to nearly 4 feet in places. "The main road should be passable by tomorrow," he said. "The stage company keeps it pretty well cleared. I can take you into Miles City then if you're feeling strong enough." Miles City, where Thomas's body presumably was, waiting to be claimed and buried. The grief tried to surge up again, but Rebecca forced it down. She would deal with that when she had to. For now, she had to focus on Emma, on making sure her daughter stayed healthy and warm. "I don't have any money," she said quietly. "Thomas had our cash with him when he went to town. I can't pay you for your help or for a hotel in town or for anything." "I'm not asking for payment," Travis said, his voice sharp. Then more gently, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap. I just mean that you don't need to worry about money right now. We'll figure it out." Rebecca looked around the cabin, really seeing it for the first time. It was small but well maintained, with a stove and fireplace, a table and 2 chairs, the bed she had slept in, and a few other pieces of simple furniture. Men's clothes hung on pegs by the door. A rifle rested over the fireplace. Everything spoke of a solitary life, carefully ordered. "You live here alone?" she asked. Travis nodded. "I have a small ranch about a mile from here. Cattle mostly, a few horses. This cabin is where I stay during the winter months when I need to be close to the herd. The main house is bigger, but it's too much work to heat when it's just me." "No wife?" The question slipped out before Rebecca could stop it, and she felt her face heat with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, that's none of my business." "No wife," Travis said, a shadow crossing his face. "I was engaged once, back in Texas. She decided ranch life wasn't for her and married a banker instead. That was 5 years ago. I came up to Montana to start fresh, and I've been here ever since." There was a story there, Rebecca could tell, layers of pain beneath the simple words. But she didn't press. She had her own grief to deal with, fresh and raw. She didn't have the strength to unpack someone else's old wounds. They spent the day quietly. Travis went out to check on his cattle, returning cold and wind-burned but satisfied that they had weathered the storm well. Rebecca rested and cared for Emma, grateful beyond words for the warmth and safety of the cabin. She tried not to think about what came next, about returning to her homestead alone, about burying her husband, about raising Emma without a father. It was all too much, too overwhelming. Better to focus on the present moment, on the simple fact that they were alive. That evening, after a supper of venison stew that Travis pulled from his stores, Rebecca found herself watching him as he cleaned the dishes. He moved with an economy of motion that spoke of long practice doing for himself. She wondered what his life was like out here, alone on this remote ranch. It seemed a lonely existence, especially for a man who showed such capacity for gentleness. "Why did you come to Montana?" she asked. "If you don't mind me asking." Travis was quiet for a long moment, staring into the dishwater. "Needed a fresh start," he said finally. "After Mary, my fiancée, called things off, I couldn't stay in Texas. Everywhere I looked, I saw the life we were supposed to have together. The ranch her father had promised to sell us. The church where we were meant to marry. It was suffocating. So I sold everything I had, bought a herd of cattle, and drove them north. Montana seemed as far from Texas as I could get while staying in the territories. You regret it?" Rebecca asked softly. Travis thought about that, drying his hands on a towel. "No," he said. "Life is hard up here, harder than I expected, but it's mine. I built this ranch with my own hands, every fence post and every building. I answer to no one but myself. There's freedom in that, even if it comes with loneliness." Rebecca understood that better than he knew. She and Thomas had come west for similar reasons, seeking a life of their own, making far from the judgments and expectations of their families back east. It hadn't worked out the way they had planned, but at least they had tried. "What will you do?" Travis asked. "About the homestead, I mean. Will you try to keep it?" Rebecca looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know if I can work a homestead alone with a baby, but it's all I have. Thomas and I put everything into that land. If I give it up, then what do I have left? There are options, Travis said carefully. You could hire a man to work the land for you, take a share of the profits. Or you could sell the claim and use the money to set yourself up somewhere, maybe open a boarding house in town. You don't have to decide right away. No, Rebecca agreed, but I'll have to decide soon. Winter won't last forever, and spring planting will be here before I know it. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the sky a brilliant blue that seemed to mock the tragedy of recent days. True to his word, Travis hitched his horse to a small sled he had stored behind the cabin and made Rebecca and Emma as comfortable as possible on it with blankets and furs. Then he mounted his horse and began the slow journey into Miles City. The trip that should have taken 2 hours took nearly 4, the horse struggling through the deep snow. Rebecca held Emma close, grateful for the blankets Travis had insisted they take. The landscape that passed by was beautiful in a stark, unforgiving way, endless white punctuated by dark clusters of pine and bare stands of cottonwood. Miles City appeared on the horizon like a cluster of dark boxes against the snow. Rebecca's heart sank as they drew closer. This was where Thomas had died, where his body waited. She would have to identify him, arrange for burial, face the awful finality of it all. Part of her wanted to tell Travis to turn around, to take her back to the quiet safety of his cabin and never make her face this. But that was the grief talking. She had to do this for Thomas, for Emma, for herself. Travis took them directly to the undertaker's establishment, a grim building near the edge of town. He helped Rebecca down from the sled, and she squared her shoulders, preparing herself for what came next. The undertaker, a Sommer man named Mr. Phillips, confirmed that he had the body of a man found frozen on the Miles City road 3 days prior. He had been waiting for someone to claim him. With a heavy heart, Rebecca followed him into the back room where the body lay covered with a sheet. "Are you certain you want to do this, madam?" Mr. Phillips asked. "It's not a pleasant sight." "I have to know," Rebecca said quietly. "I have to be sure." The undertaker pulled back the sheet, and Rebecca's worst fears were confirmed. It was Thomas, his face waxy and still, his eyes closed as if in sleep. But it wasn't sleep, would never be sleep again. Her husband was dead, had been dead for days while she waited at home believing he would return. "That's him," she whispered. "That's Thomas Kinsley, my husband." Travis's hand appeared at her elbow, steadying her. She hadn't even realized he had followed her into the room. She leaned into his support gratefully, not trusting her own legs to hold her upright. The practical arrangements that followed passed in a blur. Mr. Phillips explained costs for burial, for a casket, for a plot in the town cemetery. Rebecca listened with growing despair as she realized she couldn't afford any of it. Thomas had been carrying their money when he died, and she had no way of paying for his burial. "I'll cover it," Travis said quietly. Rebecca turned to him, shocked. No, I can't let you do that. You've already done so much." "Mrs. Kinsley," Travis said, his voice gentle but firm. "Your husband deserves a proper burial, and your daughter needs a mother who isn't sick with worry over debts. Let me do this. You can pay me back when you're able or not at all. It doesn't matter." Rebecca wanted to argue, but what choice did she have? She couldn't leave Thomas in the undertaker's back room forever, couldn't let him be buried in a pauper's grave. Swallowing her pride, she nodded. "Thank you," she said, the words inadequate for the magnitude of what he was offering. "I will pay you back. Somehow I will." They arranged for the funeral to take place 2 days hence, giving time for the grave to be dug in the frozen ground. Travis took Rebecca and Emma to the town's small hotel and paid for a room there as well, over her weak protests. "You need rest and time to grieve," he said. "Emma needs a warm place to stay. Take the room, Mrs. Kinsley, please." She was too tired, too heartsick to argue further. She let him lead her upstairs to a small but clean room, accepted the supplies he brought for the baby, and thanked him again with tears in her eyes. "I'll be staying at the boarding house down the street," Travis said. "If you need anything, anything at all, send word and I'll come right away." After he left, Rebecca sank onto the bed and finally allowed herself to truly grieve. She held Emma close and sobbed into her daughter's soft hair, mourning the husband she had lost, the future they would never have, the father Emma would never know. It felt as though her heart was being torn from her chest, the pain so intense she could barely breathe through it. But even in the depths of her grief, a small part of her recognized how lucky she was. If Travis hadn't found them in the storm, she and Emma would be dead too. They would all be gone, the whole family erased by the harsh Montana winter. Instead, they were alive, and that meant something. It had to mean something. The next 2 days passed in a haze. Rebecca made the necessary arrangements, met with the minister who would conduct the service, accepted the stiff condolences of townspeople who had barely known Thomas. Travis appeared each morning to check on her, bringing food and asking after her needs with a quiet courtesy that never felt intrusive. She found herself watching him, this unexpected savior who had appeared out of nowhere and asked for nothing in return. He was unlike any man she had known. Thomas had been gentle and kind, but also impractical, full of dreams that never quite materialized. Her father had been stern and distant, more concerned with appearances than affection. But Travis was something different, a curious mixture of frontier hardness and unexpected tenderness. The funeral was a small, somber affair. Besides Rebecca, Travis, and the minister, only a handful of townspeople attended, drawn more by curiosity than genuine grief. Rebecca stood beside the grave with Emma in her arms and tried to find words to say goodbye, but her throat closed around them. In the end, she simply placed a hand on the plain wooden casket and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Travis drove her back to the hotel in silence, seeming to understand that she needed time with her thoughts. But that evening he knocked on her door with a serious expression. "We need to talk about what happens next," he said. "I don't mean to be indelicate, but you need to make some decisions about your future." Rebecca nodded and invited him in, keeping the door open for propriety's sake. She sat on the room's single chair while Travis stood by the window, looking uncomfortable at having to raise such matters. "I visited your homestead today," he said. "I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to see what state it was in. Mrs. Kinsley, I'm afraid I have to be honest with you. The place has been damaged by the storm. Part of the roof is caved in, and the barn has collapsed entirely. Even if you wanted to keep working the land, it would take significant resources to repair the buildings." Rebecca felt her heart sink. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made it real. "How much would repairs cost?" she asked, though she already knew she couldn't afford it. "More than you have," Travis said bluntly. "And that's assuming you could find the labor to do it, which won't be easy this time of year." "So I have to sell," Rebecca said flatly. "Give up everything Thomas and I worked for." Travis was quiet for a moment. "Not necessarily," he said slowly. "There might be another option, though I know the timing is terrible and you may find the suggestion offensive." Rebecca looked at him, trying to read his expression. "What option?" Travis took a deep breath. "Marry me." The words hung in the air between them like a thunderclap. Rebecca stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What?" "I know how it sounds," Travis said quickly. "I know we barely know each other and your husband has been dead less than a week. But hear me out, please. You need help. You need a home and security and a father for Emma. I can provide all of that. And I could use a wife, someone to help run the ranch, to turn that big empty house into a home." We could combine your land claim with mine, create something substantial enough to really thrive. You want to marry me for my land, Rebecca said, her voice rising with disbelief and hurt. No, Travis said firmly. No, that's not what I'm saying. The land is a practical consideration, yes, but that's not why I'm asking. These past few days, I've watched you with Emma. I've seen your strength, your determination to protect her no matter what it costs you. I've seen your kindness even in the face of terrible grief. You're a good woman, Rebecca Kinsley, and you deserve better than to be left alone to struggle. I don't love you, Rebecca said bluntly. And you don't love me. No, Travis agreed. But we respect each other. We've already proven we can live under the same roof without driving each other mad. That's more than a lot of married couples can say. Love might come in time or it might not, but we could build a good life together regardless. A partnership based on mutual need and respect. Rebecca's mind reeled. This was madness. She couldn't marry a man she barely knew, especially not so soon after Thomas's death. It would be scandalous, improper, wrong in every possible way. And yet, the practical part of her mind, the part that had kept her alive through the blizzard, was already calculating. She had no money, no home, no way to support herself and Emma alone. Travis was offering her security, a roof over her head, a future for her daughter. Could she really afford to refuse based on sentiment and propriety? I need time to think, she said finally. This is too much, too fast. I need time. Of course, Travis said. I'm sorry for bringing it up so soon, but I wanted you to know the option was there before you made any irreversible decisions about the homestead. Think about it. Take all the time you need. After he left, Rebecca sat in the chair and stared at nothing, her mind churning. Marry Travis Henderson. It seemed impossible, absurd. But the more she turned the idea over in her mind, the less absurd it seemed. What other options did she really have? She could try to find work in town, but what kind of work could she do with a baby to care for? She could attempt to return east to her family, but that would require money she didn't have. And besides, she had left under difficult circumstances. Her father had disowned her when she married Thomas against his wishes. She doubted he would welcome her back now. She could accept charity from the church or from well-meaning townspeople, but that would make her dependent on others' goodwill, always uncertain, always vulnerable. Or she could marry Travis and have a home, security, a true partnership with a man who had already proven himself capable and kind. Was it wrong to even consider it when Thomas had been dead less than a week? Rebecca didn't know. She only knew that she was tired, scared, and desperate for some certainty in a world that had been turned upside down. That night, she dreamed of the blizzard again. But this time, when she fell in the snow and couldn't get up, Travis appeared out of the white. He scooped her and Emma into his arms and carried them not to his cabin but to a large house with golden light pouring from every window. "You're both mine now," he said in the dream, and it didn't feel like possession but like promise, like safety. Rebecca woke with her heart pounding and tears on her cheeks. She looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully in the makeshift cradle the hotel had provided. Her daughter deserved a good life, a stable home, opportunities that Rebecca couldn't give her alone. Didn't she owe it to Emma to at least consider Travis's offer seriously? The next morning, Rebecca sent word to Travis that she wanted to see him. He arrived within the hour, his expression cautious and hopeful. "I've thought about your proposal," Rebecca said without preamble. "And I have questions." Travis nodded. "Of course, ask me anything. If I agree to this, what would you expect of me? As a wife, I mean." Travis seemed to choose his words carefully. "I would expect you to help run the household and eventually the ranch operations as you're able. I would expect honesty and loyalty. As for the more intimate aspects of marriage, I would never force you to anything you weren't willing to give. We could start as partners and see where things develop naturally." Rebecca felt her face heat but pressed on. "And Emma, how would you treat her?" "As my daughter," Travis said without hesitation. "If we do this, I'm taking on both of you, not just you. Emma would have my name and my protection, the same as any child born to us later might have. I would raise her as my own." "You want more children?" Rebecca asked. "Eventually, if you're willing," Travis said. "But there's no rush. I know this whole thing would be an adjustment. We would move at whatever pace feels right to you." Rebecca looked at this man who was offering her salvation, trying to see beneath the surface to who he really was. She saw steadiness in his eyes and kindness and a loneliness that matched her own. Perhaps that was enough to build on. "I have conditions," she said. "If we do this, I need to maintain some independence. I'm not looking to trade one master for another." "I'm not looking for a servant," Travis said. "I'm looking for a partner." "What conditions?" "I want to keep my own money from any work I do, whether that's selling eggs or taking in sewing or anything else. I want a say in decisions about the ranch, not just to be told what to do. And I want to be able to change my mind about this arrangement if it isn't working, at least in the beginning." Travis considered this. "The first two conditions are fine, more than fine, but the third one concerns me. If we marry, it needs to be a real marriage, a real commitment. I'm not interested in a trial period where you can walk away at the first difficulty. That wouldn't be fair to either of us, and especially not to Emma." He was right, Rebecca realized. She couldn't go into this half-heartedly and expect it to work. If she agreed to marry Travis, she would have to commit to making it succeed, not hold part of herself back looking for the exit. "All right," she said. "No trial period, but I need you to understand that I'm not ready to share a bed with you, not yet, maybe not for a long time. Can you accept that?" "Yes," Travis said simply. "Like I said, we move at your pace. I'd rather have you willing than resentful." Rebecca took a deep breath. This was insane. This went against every notion of proper mourning and courtship she had been raised with. But these were desperate times, and she was a desperate woman with a child to protect. "Then I'll marry you," she said. "God help us both, I'll marry you." Something shifted in Travis's expression, tension she hadn't realized he was carrying flowing out of his shoulders. He smiled, a slow, genuine smile that transformed his face from handsome to beautiful. "You won't regret this," he said. "I promise you, Rebecca, I'll do everything in my power to make this work." "We both will," Rebecca corrected. "If this is going to be a partnership, we both have to work at it." They were married 3 days later in a quiet ceremony at the town church, with just the minister and his wife as witnesses. Rebecca wore her best dress, cleaned and pressed, and held Emma throughout the brief service. Travis stood beside her in clean clothes and a string tie, his hand warm and steady when he took hers to exchange vows. "I, Travis Henderson, take you, Rebecca Kinsley, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said, his voice firm and clear. "I promise to provide for you and your daughter, to protect you, to treat you with respect and kindness all the days of my life." Rebecca's own voice shook only slightly as she made her vows. "I, Rebecca Kinsley, take you, Travis Henderson, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to be a faithful partner, to work alongside you, to build a life and home together." The minister pronounced them man and wife. Travis leaned in slowly, giving Rebecca time to pull away if she wanted, and pressed a chaste kiss to her forehead. Then he took Emma from her arms and held the baby against his chest, completing the picture of their new little family. "Let's go home," he said softly, and for the first time in days, Rebecca felt something other than grief and fear. She felt hope. The trip to Travis's ranch took most of the afternoon. following the main road north before turning onto a rough track that led into the foothills. The landscape was beautiful, rolling prairie giving way to pine-covered slopes. Rebecca could see cattle in the distance, dark shapes against the snow and several sturdy outbuildings. Then the house came into view, and Rebecca felt her breath catch. Travis had described it as bigger than the winter cabin, but she hadn't expected this. It was a genuine two-story ranch house, built of logs and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around two sides. Smoke curled from two chimneys, and golden light glowed from multiple windows. "You kept the fires going," she said, surprised. "I came out yesterday to prepare the place," Travis admitted. "I wanted it to be warm when I brought you home. I wanted it to feel welcoming." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Travis helped her down from the wagon and led her inside, carrying both Emma and their few bags of belongings. The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. The main room was large and open, with a stone fireplace big enough to stand in and furniture that, while simple, was well made and comfortable looking. A kitchen area occupied one corner, with a proper cast iron stove and cabinets. Stairs led to the second floor. "There are 3 bedrooms upstairs," Travis said, setting their bags down. "The master bedroom has the best light and the most space. I thought you and Emma could take that one. I'll use one of the smaller rooms." Rebecca turned to look at him. "This is your house, Travis, your home. I'm not going to push you out of your own bedroom." "I want you to be comfortable," Travis said. "And I meant what I said about moving at your pace. It will be easier if we have separate rooms, at least for now." For now. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. This marriage might be starting as a partnership of convenience, but both of them understood that it was meant to become something more eventually. Rebecca wasn't sure how she felt about that, so she pushed the thought aside to deal with later. "Show me the house," she asked instead. "I want to see everything." Travis gave her a tour, pointing out the features with obvious pride. He had built most of it himself over the past 4 years, he explained, adding rooms as he could afford the materials. The master bedroom was indeed spacious, with a large bed covered in a beautiful quilt and a cradle already set up in one corner. "For Emma," Travis said. "I hope you don't mind. I bought it in town yesterday." Rebecca ran her hand over the smooth wood of the cradle, touched beyond words. "It's perfect," she managed. "Thank you." The next few days passed in a flurry of adjustment as Rebecca learned the rhythms of her new home. Travis rose before dawn to tend the cattle and horses, returning for breakfast that Rebecca learned to prepare on the massive kitchen stove. The days were full of work, cooking and cleaning and caring for Emma, but it felt different from the desperate scramble of the homestead. Here, there was a sense of abundance, of things being under control. Travis was a considerate housemate, careful to give Rebecca space while still being present and helpful. He played with Emma in the evenings, letting the baby grip his fingers while he made silly faces that drew out her rare smiles. He asked Rebecca's opinion on everything from meal planning to ranch operations, making it clear that he truly did see her as a partner. Slowly, carefully, they began to learn each other. Rebecca discovered that Travis was quieter than Thomas had been, more prone to thoughtful silence than constant chatter. But when he did speak, his words were considered and meaningful. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh despite herself. He was patient with Emma's crying, and never complained about the disruptions a baby brought to a formerly peaceful household. Travis learned that Rebecca was fiercely independent and stubborn, unwilling to accept help even when she clearly needed it. That she sang softly to Emma when she thought no one was listening, old ballads from her childhood. that she was smarter than she gave herself credit for, quickly grasping the complexities of ranch accounts and breeding records when he showed them to her. A month passed, then 6 weeks. The snow began to recede as February gave way to early March. Rebecca found herself thinking about Thomas less frequently, the sharp edge of grief slowly dulling into a manageable ache. She felt guilty about that sometimes, as though forgetting the pain meant forgetting him. But life insisted on continuing whether she was ready or not. One evening, after Emma had been put to bed, Rebecca found Travis at the kitchen table poring over papers. She brought him coffee and sat down across from him. "What are you working on?" she asked. "Planning for spring," he said. "Deciding which sections to rotate the herd to, how many calves I can expect, whether I can afford to hire help for the branding." "Can I help?" Rebecca asked. "I know I don't understand all of it yet, but I could learn." Travis looked up at her, something warm in his expression. "I'd like that," he said. "Here, let me show you." They bent over the papers together, Travis explaining the complexities of range management and cattle raising. Rebecca asked questions and made suggestions, some naive but others surprisingly insightful. At one point, she leaned in to get a better look at a map, and her shoulder brushed against Travis's. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, a sudden awareness of his physical presence that she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. She glanced up and found Travis looking at her, his gray eyes dark and intent. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the air between them charged with something Rebecca couldn't quite name. Then, Emma began crying upstairs and the spell broke. "I'll go," Rebecca said, standing quickly. "She probably needs changing." She fled upstairs, her heart pounding. What was that? She was attracted to her husband, she realized with shock. Somewhere in the past 6 weeks, Travis had gone from stranger to friend to something more. She noticed things about him now, the strength in his hands, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the solid warmth of his body when he stood near her. It felt like a betrayal of Thomas, even though intellectually Rebecca knew it wasn't. Thomas was gone. She had married another man. It was only natural that feelings might develop. But it had been so sudden, this shift from seeing Travis as a convenient solution to seeing him as a man she was married to, a man she might want to be married to. Rebecca tended to Emma and tried to sort through her tangled emotions. She had agreed to this marriage as a practical arrangement, a means of survival. But it was becoming something more, at least for her. Did Travis feel the same way? Was that what she had seen in his eyes downstairs, or had she imagined it? She was still wrestling with these questions when Travis knocked softly on her bedroom door. "Rebecca, is everything all right?" She opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, concern etched on his face. "Everything's fine," she said. "Emma just needed changing." Travis nodded but didn't leave. He seemed to be struggling with something, his jaw working as though chewing over words. Finally, he said, "I feel like I should apologize. Downstairs, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," Rebecca said quickly. "I wasn't uncomfortable, I was just—" She trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. "Just what?" Travis asked softly. Rebecca took a breath. They had promised each other honesty, and this conversation was probably overdue. "I was just surprised," she admitted, "by how I felt. When we got married, this was a practical arrangement. But lately, it started to feel like something more, at least to me. And I don't know what to do with that." Travis's expression softened. He reached out slowly and took her hand, his callous thumb rubbing gently over her knuckles. "It started to feel like more to me too," he said. "These past weeks, watching you with Emma, talking with you, building a life with you, I've found myself caring about you, more than I expected to, more than I probably should this soon after your loss." "It hasn't been that soon," Rebecca said. It's been almost 2 months. And Thomas, I loved him, but our marriage was young. We were still learning each other when he died. I grieve what we lost, but I also have to keep living. I have to allow myself to feel things, even things I didn't expect. What do you want, Rebecca? Travis asked. From this marriage, from me. What do you want? It was a fair question, and Rebecca owed him an honest answer. She thought about the vows they had made, about the life they were building, about the way her heart had started to speed up when he walked into a room. I want this to be real, she said finally. Not just a business arrangement or a marriage of convenience. I want us to be a true husband and wife in all the ways that means. I want to build something lasting with you. Travis's eyes were very bright in the dim hallway. You're sure? He asked. I don't want you to feel obligated. I can wait as long as you need. I can wait forever if that's what it takes. Rebecca stepped closer to him, closing the distance between them. I'm sure, she said. I'm ready, Travis, if you are. He cupped her face in both hands, his touch gentle despite the roughness of his skin. I've been ready since the moment I pulled you out of that blizzard, he said. I just didn't know it yet. Then he kissed her, slow and sweet and careful, as though she was something precious that might break. Rebecca's eyes fluttered closed as she leaned into the kiss, her hands coming up to grip his arms. It felt nothing like kissing Thomas had, which had been pleasant but not particularly exciting. This felt electric, awakening something in her that had been dormant or maybe had never existed before. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Travis rested his forehead against hers. We should probably take this slow, he said, sounding reluctant. Give you time to be certain. I am certain, Rebecca said, but slow is probably wise anyway. I'm a little out of practice at this. Travis laughed, the sound warm and free. So am I, believe me. We'll figure it out together. They stood in the hallway for a long moment, simply holding each other, learning the shape and feel of being close. Eventually, Travis pressed a kiss to her forehead and reluctantly stepped back. I should let you sleep, he said. But Rebecca, thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for asking me to, Rebecca replied, for seeing something in me worth saving. After he had gone to his own room, Rebecca climbed into the big bed and stared up at the ceiling, a smile playing on her lips. Her life had been torn apart by tragedy just weeks ago, but somehow, impossibly, she was happy. She had a home, a daughter who was thriving, and a husband who was becoming so much more than she had ever expected. The next weeks brought a subtle but definite shift in their relationship. Travis began finding excuses to touch her, a hand at her waist as he passed in the kitchen, fingers brushing hers when he handed her something. Rebecca leaned into those touches, returning them with touches of her own. They sat closer together in the evenings, their bodies aligned on the sofa as they talked about their days. The physical attraction was growing, that much was obvious, but so was something deeper. They were becoming true partners, finishing each other's sentences, working in easy synchronization around the house and ranch. Travis began teaching Rebecca to ride properly, and she taught him the songs her mother had sung to her as a child. They shared dreams and fears, hopes for the future, stories from their pasts. One evening in late March, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Travis said, I never thought I'd feel this way again. After Mary left, I convinced myself I was better off alone. That caring for someone just opened you up to hurt, but you've proven me wrong about that. Rebecca took his hand, lacing their fingers together. I never thought I'd feel this way at all, she admitted. Thomas was a good man and I cared for him, but this thing between us, it's different. Stronger somehow, more real. Do you feel guilty about that? Travis asked. About moving on so quickly. Rebecca considered the question honestly. Sometimes, she said, but mostly I feel grateful. Grateful that I survived that blizzard. Grateful that you found us. Grateful that I have a second chance at happiness. I think Thomas would want that for me. He wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life grieving. Travis lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. I'm going to make you so happy, Rebecca. I swear it. You and Emma both. You'll never regret choosing me. I already don't, Rebecca said softly. That night, for the first time since their wedding, Rebecca didn't go to the master bedroom alone. She stopped outside Travis's door and knocked softly. He opened it, surprise and hope warring on his face. I don't want to sleep alone anymore, Rebecca said simply. If that's all right with you. Travis's answer was to pull her into his arms and kiss her deeply, all the restraint he had been showing finally breaking. Rebecca melted into him, her body fitting against his as though they had been designed for each other. They made their way to his bed, shedding clothes and inhibitions, learning each other's bodies with hands and mouths and whispered words. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, Rebecca felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace, she realized. For the first time since Thomas's death, she felt truly at peace. I love you, she said, the words slipping out before she could second-guess them. I know it's fast, and I know we got married for all the wrong reasons, but I love you, Travis, truly. Travis rolled to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. I love you too, he said. I think I have since that first day when you were so determined to protect Emma, even though you could barely stand. You were the bravest, strongest, most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was lost right then. I just didn't know it yet. They made love again, slower this time, savoring each touch and kiss. When Rebecca finally drifted off to sleep, it was with Travis's arms wrapped around her and his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. She dreamed not of blizzards and death, but of spring and new beginnings, of a future bright with possibility. Spring came to Montana in a rush, the snow melting to reveal brown grass that would soon turn green. The ranch burst into activity as calving season began. Rebecca found herself working alongside Travis from dawn to well past dusk, helping to deliver calves, bottle-feeding orphans, keeping records. It was exhausting work, but she loved it. She loved the sense of purpose, the feeling that she was building something that would last. Emma thrived in the ranch environment, growing chubby and healthy under Rebecca and Travis's attentive care. By the time summer arrived, she was crawling and babbling, her bright eyes taking in everything around her. Travis doted on her shamelessly, carrying her around on his shoulders and making her giggle with his antics. You're going to spoil her, Rebecca said one evening, watching Travis dance around the kitchen with Emma in his arms, both of them laughing. That's my prerogative as her father, Travis said, and the casual way he claimed that title made Rebecca's heart swell. They had filed the legal papers to formally adopt Emma, giving her Travis's last name and making their family official in the eyes of the law. Emma Henderson. It had a nice ring to it. In August, Rebecca realized her monthly bleeding was late. She waited another week before allowing herself to hope, then another week to be certain. When she finally told Travis that she was carrying his child, he picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests that he needed to be careful. We're having a baby, he kept saying, his face split in the widest grin Rebecca had ever seen. We're having a baby. The pregnancy was easier than Rebecca's first had been, perhaps because she was better fed and less stressed, or perhaps simply because every pregnancy was different. Travis fussed over her constantly, trying to keep her from doing any heavy work, which drove Rebecca crazy until they reached a compromise. She could continue her normal activities as long as she promised to rest when she was tired, and let him know if anything felt wrong. As fall approached and Rebecca's belly swelled, they began preparing the third bedroom as a nursery. Travis built a second cradle, even finer than Emma's, and Rebecca sewed tiny clothes and blankets. They argued good-naturedly about names, Travis lobbying for Jacob if it was a boy and Rebecca preferring Matthew. For a girl, they quickly agreed on Sarah after Travis's mother. On a cold November night, with the first snow of winter falling outside, Rebecca went into labor. Travis rode to fetch the doctor from town, while Rebecca labored with the help of Mrs. Patterson, the neighboring rancher's wife who had become a good friend over the past months. The baby came quickly, much faster than Emma had. Rebecca pushed through 3 contractions and then heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her newborn son's first cry. "It's a boy," Mrs. Patterson announced, laying the squalling infant on Rebecca's chest. "A big, healthy boy." Rebecca looked down at her son, taking in his red face and shock of dark hair, and felt her heart expand in a way she hadn't known was possible. "Hello, Matthew," she whispered. "Welcome to the world, sweet boy." Travis arrived home with the doctor to find mother and baby both doing well. He came into the bedroom like a whirlwind, snow still clinging to his coat, and stopped dead at the sight of Rebecca holding their son. "Matthew Travis Henderson," Rebecca said, pulling back the blanket so Travis could see the baby's face. 7 pounds, maybe 8. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a good strong voice. Travis approached the bed slowly, almost reverently. He sat on the edge and reached out to touch Matthew's tiny hand, his own hand shaking slightly. The baby's fingers curled instinctively around Travis's index finger, and Rebecca watched tears slide down her husband's cheeks. "He's perfect," Travis whispered. "You're perfect. God, Rebecca, I never imagined I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Rebecca said truthfully. "A year ago I thought my life was over. Now look at us. 2 beautiful children, a thriving ranch, and a love that still takes my breath away." Travis leaned in to kiss her, gentle and sweet. "You're everything to me," he said. "You and Emma and Matthew, you're my whole world." The early days with a newborn were chaotic and exhausting, but Rebecca and Travis navigated them together. Travis took over most of Emma's care, so Rebecca could focus on Matthew, walking the floors with the toddler when she woke crying in the night, making breakfast and helping Emma eat while Rebecca nursed the baby. They were a team, functioning with the kind of seamless cooperation that came from true partnership. As winter deepened, and the year turned toward 1886, Rebecca found herself reflecting on everything that had happened since that terrible day in the blizzard. So much had changed. She had lost a husband but gained another. She had nearly died but had been saved. She had been alone and desperate and had found a family. One evening, as she sat by the fire with Matthew sleeping in her arms and Emma playing at her feet while Travis worked on repairing a bridle, Rebecca felt a wave of contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Travis noticed immediately, setting aside his work and coming to kneel beside her chair. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern creasing his forehead. "Nothing's wrong," Rebecca assured him, reaching out to touch his face. "I was just thinking about how lucky we are. How different things could have been if you hadn't found us in that storm." Travis covered her hand with his own, turning his head to press a kiss to her palm. "I think about that too sometimes," he admitted. "About what my life would be like if I'd taken a different route that day, if I'd missed you in the snow. I can't imagine it anymore, Rebecca. Can't imagine a life without you and the children." "You'll never have to," Rebecca promised. "We're yours, Travis, forever, all of us." "And I'm yours," Travis said. "For as long as I live and beyond that, if there's anything after, you're both mine now, all 3 of you, my family. My heart." Rebecca leaned down to kiss him, awkward with the baby in her arms but full of love. Emma toddled over and demanded to be included, and Travis scooped her up with a laugh, pulling them all into an embrace. This was happiness, Rebecca thought. Not the absence of hardship or sorrow, but the presence of love strong enough to weather any storm. She had learned that lesson the hard way, had survived tragedy and built something beautiful from the ashes. And she would spend the rest of her life grateful for that terrible blizzard that had brought her to Travis, for the cowboy who had held them close and claimed them as his own. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing from a modest operation to one of the most successful in the territory. Rebecca proved to have a head for business, managing the accounts and negotiating deals with buyers while Travis handled the physical work of ranching. They expanded their herd, bought more land, built a bunkhouse for the seasonal workers they hired each year. Emma grew into a bright, energetic girl who could ride a horse almost before she could walk properly. She adored her baby brother and followed Travis around the ranch like a devoted shadow. Matthew was a quieter child, more inclined to thoughtfulness than action, but he had his father's steady temperament and his mother's quick mind. In the spring of 1887, Rebecca gave birth to their second child together, a daughter they named Sarah after all. The little girl had Rebecca's red gold hair and Travis's gray eyes, a beautiful combination that drew compliments from everyone who saw her. 3 children felt like the perfect number for their family, and Rebecca and Travis agreed they were content, but life had other plans. In 1889, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant again, much to their surprise. Their 4th child, another boy they named Daniel, arrived that winter. And then, just when they thought their family was surely complete, came twin girls in 1891, Rose and Grace, 6 children. Their home was never quiet, never still, always full of laughter and occasional tears and the beautiful chaos of family life. Travis built an addition onto the house to accommodate everyone, and they hired help for Rebecca, a young woman named Anne who assisted with the children and household chores. Through it all, through the busy years of raising children and building an empire, Rebecca and Travis's love only deepened. They still made time for each other, stolen moments in the barn or late nights after the children were asleep, keeping their connection strong. They still talked for hours, sharing thoughts and dreams and fears. They still touched constantly, casually, the easy affection of 2 people who belonged to each other completely. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Travis surprised Rebecca with a trip to Helena, just the 2 of them leaving the children in Anne's capable care. They stayed in a fancy hotel and ate in restaurants and went to the theater like a proper courting couple. On their last night there, as they lay in the hotel bed, Travis pulled out a small box. "I never gave you a proper engagement ring," he said. "We got married so quickly and there wasn't time for such things. But I wanted you to have something to mark this anniversary. 10 years, Rebecca. 10 years of marriage and 6 beautiful children, and a life beyond anything I imagined." Rebecca opened the box to find a simple gold band set with a small but perfect diamond. Tears filled her eyes as Travis took the ring and slid it onto her finger above her wedding band. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Travis, you didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said. "I wanted you to have something that showed the world how much I treasure you, how much I love you." Rebecca kissed him deeply, pouring a decade of love and gratitude into the gesture. "I love you too," she said when they finally parted. "More than I can ever express. You saved my life that day in the blizzard, but more than that, you gave me a life worth living. You gave me love and family and home. You gave me everything." "We gave it to each other," Travis corrected gently. "That's what a true partnership is. Not one person saving the other, but two people building something together that neither could have created alone. He was right, Rebecca knew. They had built something extraordinary together, a love that had started in desperation and grown into the foundation of a beautiful life. They had weathered storms, literal and figurative, had faced hardships and celebrated triumphs, had raised children and built a legacy. As the years continued to pass, as their children grew and eventually began leaving home to start lives of their own, Rebecca never forgot those terrible hours in the blizzard. She never forgot the moment when Travis had appeared out of the snow like an answer to prayer. She never forgot the night he had held Emma close and said those words that would define their future together. "You're both mine now." At the time, half frozen and grieving, Rebecca had barely registered the words, but looking back, she understood their significance. Travis hadn't just rescued them that day. He had claimed them, taken responsibility for them, made them his family in the most fundamental way. And in doing so, he had given Rebecca the greatest gift she had ever received, the chance to love and be loved in return. Emma grew up to marry a neighboring rancher's son, giving Rebecca her first grandchildren. Matthew went to college in the East and became a lawyer, though he eventually returned to Montana and opened a practice in Miles City. Sarah married a banker and moved to Denver, though she visited often with her growing brood. Daniel took over the day-to-day operations of the ranch, proving himself a worthy successor to his father. And the twins, Rose and Grace, both became teachers, opening a small school on the ranch property to educate not only their own future children but those of neighboring families. Through all of it, through watching their children grow and succeed, through welcoming grandchildren, and eventually even a few great-grandchildren, Rebecca and Travis remained deeply in love. They grew old together, their hair turning gray and their steps slowing, but the connection between them never weakened. On a spring day in 1912, nearly 3 decades after their wedding, Travis and Rebecca sat together on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over land they had tamed and built into something lasting. Travis's hand found Rebecca's, their fingers intertwining with the automatic ease of long practice. "You ever regret it?" Travis asked suddenly. "Marrying me so quickly after Thomas died, giving up your independence to tie yourself to this ranch and to me?" Rebecca turned to look at her husband of 27 years, this man who had saved her life and then given her a reason to live it fully. She thought about all the moments they had shared, all the children they had raised, all the love they had built between them. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You were exactly what I needed, Travis, even though I didn't know it at the time. You were the answer to a prayer I didn't know how to pray, and every day since, you've proven that I made the right choice." Travis lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles just as he had done countless times over the years. "You made me believe in love again," he said. "After Mary, I thought I was done with all that. But then I found you and Emma in that blizzard, and something in me recognized that you were mine, that you were meant to be mine, and I've spent every day since trying to be worthy of that gift." "You are worthy," Rebecca said. "You've always been worthy." "You're the best man I've ever known, Travis Henderson. The best husband, the best father, the best partner. I'm the lucky one. I got to spend my life with you." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the first stars began to appear. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of their family, Daniel and his wife preparing dinner, grandchildren running and playing. It was the sound of legacy, of love carried forward into the future. Rebecca leaned her head on Travis's shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him even after all these years. She thought about that terrified young woman who had been stumbling through a blizzard with a dying baby in her arms, convinced she would never see another sunrise. She thought about how Travis had appeared like a miracle, had scooped them up and carried them to safety, had looked at her with those gray eyes and promised her a future. "You're both mine now," he had said, and he had meant it. They had become his in that moment, and he had become theirs, bound together by circumstance that had transformed into choice, choice that had blossomed into love. It was a love story that had started in tragedy and desperation, but had grown into something beautiful and enduring. It was the story of two people who had needed each other and had had the courage to build a life together despite all the reasons they shouldn't. It was the story of a cowboy and a widow and a baby in a blizzard, and how they had survived the storm to find their way home. And it was a story that would continue, carried forward by their children and grandchildren, a legacy of love and resilience that would endure long after Rebecca and Travis were gone. But that was years in the future still. For now, in this perfect moment, they were simply two people who loved each other, sitting together in the fading light, grateful for every day they had been given. Travis pulled Rebecca closer, and she nestled against him, content down to her bones. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of spring growth and new beginnings. Somewhere in the distance, a calf bawled for its mother, and closer by, children laughed. These were the sounds of their life, the music of the family and home they had built together. "I love you," Rebecca murmured, the words as natural as breathing after all these years. "I love you too," Travis replied, his voice warm with affection and contentment. "Forever and always. You and all our children. You're mine and I'm yours, and that's all that matters." Rebecca smiled against his shoulder, thinking of that long-ago day when she had been so certain her life was ending. She had been wrong. Her life hadn't been ending in that blizzard. It had been beginning, transformed by the love of a good man, who had been brave enough to claim them as his own and patient enough to let that claim become something real and lasting. As the stars brightened overhead and the night settled in around them, Rebecca gave thanks for every twist of fate that had brought her to this moment, for the storm that had forced her out into the snow, for Travis's decision to ride that particular path on that particular day, for his kindness and his courage and his unwavering love. She had been lost in a blizzard, but she had been found. She had been broken by grief, but she had been healed by love. She had thought she had nothing left to live for, but instead, she had discovered a life richer and fuller than she had ever imagined possible. And it had all started with a cowboy who had held her close in the midst of a Montana winter and promised her that everything would be all right. A cowboy who had looked at her and her baby and seen not burdens but blessings, not obligations but opportunities. A cowboy who had said those simple, powerful words that had changed everything. "You're both mine now." They had been his from that moment forward, and he had been theirs. And together, they had built something that would last far beyond their own lifetimes. A love story for the ages, born in hardship and tempered by time into something unbreakable. As Rebecca drifted off to sleep that night in the bed she had shared with Travis for nearly 3 decades, she dreamed not of blizzards but of sunshine, not of fear but of joy. She dreamed of her children and grandchildren, of the ranch stretching green and fertile under summer skies, of Travis's smile and his gentle hands and his steadfast heart. She dreamed of love and of home and of the beautiful life they had created together from the ashes of tragedy. And when she woke the next morning to Travis's kiss and the sound of their grandchildren playing outside and the smell of coffee brewing, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. This was her happily ever after, hard-won and deeply appreciated. This was the life she had fought for, and the love she had chosen. This was everything she had ever needed, wrapped up in the man sleeping beside her, and the family they had created, and the land they had tamed together. The years ahead would bring their share of sorrows and joys, as all lives do. But Rebecca faced them without fear, knowing that whatever came, she and Travis would weather it together. They had survived a blizzard that should have killed them. They could survive anything. And when Travis finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 83, with Rebecca holding his hand and their children gathered around them, his last words were a perfect echo of that long-ago promise. "You're mine," he whispered to Rebecca. "Forever mine. In this life and the next." "And you're mine," Rebecca replied through her tears. "Always and forever." He smiled then, that same gentle smile that had greeted her through 37 years of marriage, and closed his eyes for the final time. Rebecca sat with him for a long while, holding his hand as it slowly cooled, remembering the warmth of his embrace in that distant blizzard, the strength of his arms carrying her to safety, the tenderness of his love transforming her life. She lived 4 more years without him, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the legacy of the love they had built together. And when her own time came to pass, Rebecca went peacefully, her last thoughts of Travis waiting for her, ready to hold her close once more and remind her that they belonged to each other, now and always. Their graves stood side by side in the family cemetery on the ranch, marked by simple headstones that bore their names and the dates of their lives. But their true legacy lived on in the generations that followed, in the ranch that still bore the Henderson name, in the love stories their descendants told about the widow and the cowboy who had found each other in a blizzard and built a love that lasted lifetimes. It was a story of survival and second chances, of courage and commitment, of love born from desperate need and nurtured into something extraordinary. It was the story of a family, a ranch, a life well lived. And it all began with those words, spoken in the midst of a Montana winter storm, a promise that changed everything. "You're both mine now," and they were, forever and always, through this life and into whatever came next. Bound together by love and choice, and the kind of devotion that only comes from weathering the worst storms and emerging stronger on the other side. This was their story. This was their legacy. This was love.